Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are on this fast forward planet. A very disrupted place. Stock markets keep zooming, or I guess Bitcoin stopped zooming. But the dynamics of daily life for most people on the planet are fine. But they aren't fine if the internet goes down. And, anyone who's lives in an area with irregular access to electricity, the internet, and the things we all count on, you know what I mean. I'm currently speaking to you from rural Maine, where there are big gaps and a big digital divide still. Today, we're going to talk on a global scale briefly with Doug Midori, who is if anyone has his finger on the pulse of connectivity and the things that disrupt it, it seems to be Doug. He's at a firm called Kartik, and you will learn more about them in a second. Kentic, I'm sorry. I'm Andy Revkin. I'm at the Columbia Climate School Earth Institute, and this is a Sustained webcast, which I'm starting out with a scene that many of you saw in one way or the other. This was a feed, one of many views of this astounding event when the Earth moved and erupted. Seems like ages ago, seems like just days ago, depending on your experience. And this came with a dramatic disruption of internet access there. Fortunately, the on-the-ground impact in terms of immediate mortality and morbidity was pretty limited, partially thanks to preparedness and warning systems, some of which rely on the internet. So, Doug, I wouldn't have known about you if it hadn't been for the social media and posting you were doing as this event was unfolding. You were tracking that aspect of it, the loss of their connectivity. And when I was digging in on that, I realized, I looked back, I think in 2019, the country had had a significant disruption of its cable, connecting it to Fiji and onward. So could you just start a little bit and say what it is you do, and then we'll get to why it's important and what these gaps are and how resilience in these systems is important? What got you into this?
Yes, I'll try. Yeah,
Why
I'll try
are you taking
to.
this pulse, this global pulse?
Yeah, that's my job. I've been doing this kind of work for over a decade now at a couple different companies, and the latest is Kentic that I'm at now. And so Kentic does a lot of network monitoring. The core data that we have that I have to work with is it's called Netflow. These are records of internet communications that we basically do analysis for telecoms, large enterprises, how traffic is coming in and out of their network, and we pull in all the statistics, we analyze it, and we give it back to them in a way that they can use to optimize their network. But in the meantime, I have many of these pictures of vantage points of internet connectivity from a lot of large telecoms. And when I merge all those together, it gives me a very good picture of what's happening on the internet. And I've been doing this for with different data sets in the past, and now I'm using Kentic's data to look at what is that we can what can we determine both for our clients, and then also we've got this amazing God's eye view to look into notable events, and so this benefits us. And there's a marketing aspect of this that helps get the brand out, but also I feel like it's not purely for our benefit. It's good to inform the discourse around these things, that we can apply some empirical data as far as when exactly we saw different things happen. And so you've got the Tonga blog, yeah, and this graph you're looking at here is this based on the bits per second. This is traffic heading to Tonga by the telecom that's on Tonga. So there's a couple of networks, a couple of companies provide service there. There's this first one is Tonga. This is one of their names, but their commercial name is now Tonga Communications Company, TCC, that's what they go by, or Digicel. Those are the two main carriers that you would get from in Tonga. And those are the two kind of shades of green in this graphic. And so what I'm doing is I'm pulling all the data from all of our customers around the world, that were sending traffic to Tonga, and where did it end up? And by volume over time, what did it look like? So there's two
Yeah.
features. There's one where there's a drop off that's happens within about a minute of the eruption. That's when this graph starts to drop, and then there's a second moment where it just goes absolutely to zero, and we've got no pulse whatsoever. And so I
Yeah.
think the first one, this is whatever was the immediate impact of the volcano itself hitting the island. It probably took some matter of seconds from the volcano to Tonga, and then the second one, it was a little over an hour away when it goes to completely zero. My theory, we'll learn in time, is that's the moment the submarine cable went out, and it may be due to an
Interesting.
undersea landslide, undersea volcano, something. But that's my theory.
Now, I know some of us are so in our digital worlds and in our niches in the digital world that some big event could happen on another arena we don't really focus on, and we wouldn't notice it until it kind of intruded into our arena. I'm just curious, did you hear first about the eruption, or did you see this blip first? Which came first?
First came a call from the Associated Press asking me to confirm that Tonga was gone off the internet. So I've been doing this for a while. A lot of people know to reach out to me. These days I get that's my system for alerting is people who have known me for following this or that, that know me on different subjects, reach out. Like in Yemen, as soon as Yemen went down last week, I had a contact who's Yemen man that I've worked with past reached out. But in this case, yeah, I had a little history with this as well. So one of my areas of interest is submarine cables, and we can talk about that. In the Pacific, this is the lifeblood of internet connectivity for these island nations. And they're also, it's something I discussed in this blog post you got up of that these are expensive to run a submarine cable to anywhere. And to
There's
an
a lot of
island
real estate out
of,
there.
yeah, I mean, there's is just a lot of fabrication costs, like how to fabricate a fiber optic cable is going to go 1,000 miles or however long it is, and
Right.
separately the installation, which means there's a ship out there feeding it, the back ship along the shore, parts that go to it. So submarine cables is of mine on this graph you got here. This is when I was with a former company, a different company, and we had spotted the cable coming active. So prior to the submarine cable, they were on geostationary satellite service.
Sorry about
And
the phone.
yeah, no worries. And so we were able to spot the activation of the cable and see there's a huge difference in performance and latency that graphic depicts, and that makes a big difference for internet connectivity. The latency does, and then latency basically translates for you or I into how sluggish the internet feels to you. If you're playing a video game, it's very noticeable. And then otherwise, is capacity, a big capacity difference between a satellite and a submarine cable. Submarine cable has far greater capacity. And I know I've had a few people reach out to me or talk to me in the last week of saying, I'm surprised we're still using submarine cables. So much of the internet relies on them. And it's true. It's never going to be another way. This is where we're at. We rely on submarine cables to connect the global internet.
So yeah, cables generally. I started to think about this back in 2012 when I was writing for the Times, my blog.earth, and I learned about. I was really focusing on the sustainability, how the foundational importance of connectivity for sustainability, for access to information, for an equivalent playing field for countries, to understand where pathogens are emerging, or just without that connectivity, you really are. The digital gaps in the planet are terrific hindrance to social fabric being robust and resilient to so many things. And I heard about this cable being laid. It was laid ahead of the World Cup coming to South Africa. And it was mostly privately financed, mostly African money. But it seemed to generate a lot of beneficial after effect, because once it was there mainly to kind of get high speed, high quality video from the World Cup to the world, to Europe and stuff. And I hadn't really thought about cables. I think we all get so focused on the Elon Musks of the world and what's happening in space, we miss that these physical systems really matter. So that's you're kind of reinforcing that point.
Yeah, that's something that all that you say is true. There are gaps that satellites are going to help fill, and there's a lot of activity right now going on in the satellite space. I don't know if that's something that you follow, but there's a big push with, like you mentioned, Elon Musk. He's got some competitors with OneWeb and of doing low Earth orbit, like many thousands of satellites in low Earth orbit, but that's still, in the case of Tonga, he kind of tweeted out, we're here if you need if you need us for connectivity. Right. Tonga, of course, his SpaceX couldn't help, and it's I don't know if he was just trying to get some attention for himself, but those satellites
that would never happen.
Yeah, those satellites are close to the Earth, and so they also, at this time, they don't communicate to each other. They can only just bounce off signals off the ground. So that means there's a ground station nearby. And in the Pacific, that's just never going to work. You're just never going to be, the footprint of each satellite is so small that you're not going to be able to relay from the ground. So the Pacific is not a place where SpaceX, until it is able to do the inter-satellite links. So someone else, I think, on one of his tweets, he's like, "Oh, we were here if you need it," and someone writes back like, "Yes, we need you," and then he writes back, like, "Oh, it turns out we don't have the inter-satellite links yet, so I don't think we can do." And I was like, I think he knew that. Like, he's not a dummy.
No. Well, up here in rural Maine, there are a lot of people still waiting for Starlink to become more of a reality.
I mean, it can help there. Like that makes a lot of sense in places like that.
I wanted to get back to Tonga because you did tweet some news earlier today, which is that from the back-end monitoring you do, it's coming back.
Yeah, we're seeing some satellite service coming back via satellite, and so you've got the traffic dropping off due to the volcano taking out the submarine cable. It's been confirmed that there's both a cut in the cable that links Tonga to the outside world, to Fiji, and then on to the outside world. And then there's also a domestic cable linking some of the islands together. So Tonga is a constellation of islands. Right. Both of those were broken, but they need the link to Fiji to get fixed before they can get their high-speed internet back. But in the meantime, we've seen both Speedcast and Pacific now is the latest one to show up in our data, connecting Tonga, and and so they're starting to come back, that's hopeful. I'm sure that's much appreciated by the people in Tonga.
Yeah, and what's your impression about why this matters? One thing we're going to get to in a minute is how this is a geophysical disruption of the cable, but around the world, it sure looks, in looking at your feed, like most of the disruptions in internet connectivity and open internet are social. They're political. They're someone turning a switch.
There are a lot.
So it's not just acts of nature. But my initial question is, why does this matter so much? Like, what makes this matter to a country or its society?
I think not to put too fine a point on it, but I think the internet is the defining technology of human civilization in our day, and these days, all of our much of our life is mediated through the internet one way or the other. Even if you're in Tonga, and to lose that is super disruptive to your economy and just how you communicate with the outside world. And so that makes it both notable when a undersea volcano erupts and takes out the connection of an island, or if an authoritarian leader service due to anti-government protests. It's an important event, and so I am one of the people out there that tries to document as many of these as I can. Yeah, here's just a so I see you're scrolling through the. I wrote up a kind of a top 10 of
Right.
outages last year, just kind of rolling up. It was a busy year last year, and this year is going to be even busier. I think. I mean, we're just off to a crazy start with how many things have broken in the first couple of weeks of 2022. So.
So just walk through, what do these curves say to you when you see them happening?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to start at the top or
Yeah, sure. Let's
can.
start at the top. Yeah. Sorry. And I normally have a better setup for all this, but life and
No worries.
taking care of my mother-in-law of rural Maine and doing this at the same time
Yeah,
is
all right, you
interesting.
get to priorities. So
So here we are in
yeah,
Uganda.
about a year ago, there was an election, a contested election in Uganda, and actually this is before the election started. This wasn't often this is in the aftermath, and
Hmm.
people don't like the results, or they don't agree with the results, they don't trust the results, and so they go on the street and they protest, and then the internet gets turned off. In this case, in anticipation of all that, the internet was turned off during all of the voting, and there's a lot of disputes and complaints about how this election was conducted. That's a little
Right.
outside my space. What I'm interested in doing is just documenting that the service went offline and
Sure.
we've got substantial to bear, and so we want to put our 2 cents in and say we saw it at this time. This is what happened. But this is
Well, it's kind of like the weather and extreme storms and like it's like the folks who are monitoring disinformation. You're monitoring kind of disrupted gaps in information anyway.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's we've got our own with the type of data that we have. We have our own particular view, and
Hmm.
others have slightly different ways to look at this. So this is just a fiber cut. Um,
Yeah.
these are domestically within the United States. We still have outages. We saw in the text there a 12% drop in traffic. So Myanmar was a big story this
Right.
year, this past year. So that was pretty wild sequence of events. In the course of a couple of months, we had disruption, every style of disruption that we'd seen anywhere in the world over the last
Amazing.
10 years. So there was a coup. They turned off a bunch of the internet, but not all of it. I think they, from my contacts in country, because I've covered Myanmar in the past, they said that this was kind of a process. They're just the government calling up or faxing. Sometimes you get a fax says you need to shut the internet off at this time, and there are private companies that provide the service,
Hmm.
but you kind of don't have a choice. You are businesses. It's a difficult position that they're in where they are able to operate with a license from the government. If they don't follow the government's orders, then the license could be
Right.
pulled. Their investment's gone. So they've got a lot at risk, and so they're in a difficult position where they kind of have to comply with sometimes a very bad order. But in this case, we had what we said like a style outage, where if you recall back in the beginning of the Arab Spring in 2011, Egypt just 100% turned everything off, and I kind of refer to that as that's the nuclear option. We just turn everything off. We saw this nightly blackouts of like an internet curfew. So internet was going during the day and then it was off at night when protesters were gathering. And then there was a period of time when they were blocking just mobile data service. And that seems to be one way that governments try to limit there's a lot of collateral damage to shutting the internet off. They don't want to shut themselves off. They don't want to shut off businesses and banking and things that are kind of vital. But
Sure.
if one way that this ends up manifesting itself is that the government chooses to shut off mobile data service, and that way the crowds in the street, how are they communicating? It's not fixed line. they're using mobile devices to coordinate and share with their stuff. But people in office are on fixed line, and they're probably not a threat to the government. So you'd see them just focus on data. That was the period of time where the mobile data was shut down. But
Well, and
anyway,
is
so
there?
it's
Sorry.
oh yeah. I mean, I guess the internet's come back to normal. The military junta is still in charge. I joined up with a couple other academic outfits, and we put together a presentation and a paper that we published, kind of joining different data sets together to try to do a kind of a multi-dimensional view into what was going on in Myanmar.
So you can start to get a more fine-tuned picture of the.
I mean, there's some things that I don't
how
do. So like censorship, if someone's blocking a particular site, I'm looking at like the pipes, like the big macro level changes,
Right.
but I won't know if someone's blocking a particular, or it may be very difficult for me to see it in our data. And so there's other outfits that track censorship specifically, and so we kind of team up because our stuff's complementary with theirs. And so that was what that joint academic effort was.
And I guess this is a situation where there's not much the outside world can do. Back in the day, Radio Free Europe, would stream information into countries over the radio waves. And what are
So
what
there's
are
a
the
lot of
options?
discussion. Yeah, there's a lot of sorry to cut you off. There's a lot of discussion around that, and it came up a lot during Cuba. So Cuba in July this past year, there were a lot of protests. There was some. We reported on some internet blockages by the government to quell the unrest there. And in the United States, Cuba is a a political topic. There's a lot of strong emotions about one way or the other of what should be going on in Cuba. And so it became kind of a political topic to say we, the United States, need to turn the internet service back on in Cuba. And obviously we had a member of one of the FCC commissioners and politicians from Florida joining in on this. It's not that easy to do. I think it's not as easy as they made it seem. It's never really been done where an outside entity has turned on, reactivated internet service in a country that without the cooperation of the local providers. So the examples they cite are cases in Africa where people had aerial balloons that relayed signals and worked with the local mobile providers to reach hard to reach places. If the companies are working together, that's one thing. But if it's an adversarial thing, that's never happened before. Someone has just kind of anyway. So that's a whole topic right there of like what could be done. If there were a way, that'd be really amazing. And I'd love to talk about it and look at it. I'm not really. I just don't. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, if maybe, if there ever were a ubiquitous satellite network that's sort of open, could that?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess like let's go back to Elon Musk and his let's say there's a low Earth orbit satellite constellation ready to go. You do need something on the ground, a piece of equipment to connect up. Like you can't. Your phone, my phone, is to a mobile network that we're not a part of. A little being in last summer, I was talking to host Tom on the balloons. There are the high altitude balloons that you can use to relay signals. At some point, someone's phone in Havana needs to get a new SIM chip. Right? I mean, this is how this works. Like the phone needs to know to register to get onto another network. Now, that's not completely impossible, but what's the plan there? Is it SEAL Team 6 is going to arrive on shore with a bag of SIM chips to hand out. I mean, you got to do something. If it's satellite, then you're handling satellite terminals, ground equipment, and that's actually illegal. That's what Alan Gross went to prison for years, was smuggling in satellite equipment. So, um, um, yeah, it would be neat to be able to do that. And it's true, in theory, there are technical means to go about doing this, but a real plan, I heard of that. The whole other side of it, the whole that skips over, is a national legal framework around ramifications. And every government is a sovereign entity and gets to dictate how who provides telecom service in their country. And so if the U.S. was to impose that on China or on Cuba, and we would be violating that. I would. Maybe there's a case to be made where you could have some sort of exigent circumstances where it's a crisis. These rules don't apply or don't serve the greater good. One could make that argument, and maybe Elon Musk is the ego we need to go in and say, like, all right, you're going to sue me. I'll see you in court. We'll see you, and we'll see where because I mean, the public's not going to be on the side of the military junta if he's using his constellation to reactivate service in Myanmar, for example. So it's an interesting thought exercise of where would that go? How would that what would that look like? I thought of maybe writing an op-ed of just saying, why don't we have in the ITU is the international government body for telecom rules, have a rule there. If the government shuts the service off, it no longer retains its ability to control new entrants to market, and that would give a legal cover to whoever to now provide service. But anyway, it'll never happen. It's just it's an interesting thought.
So just a couple more things here before we close out, and this just feels like just the beginning of a conversation we can broaden out to.
I could go for hours, to be honest.
Well, but on that issue of models of governance in the 21st century, as some corporations get so big and powerful, where maybe they can just sort of say, hey, new rules, kind of like Domar's new rules.
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, the ITU is part of the UN. The UN, if the largest, most powerful parties that make up the UN don't agree, then the UN isn't effective, right? And all of its subsidiary, WHO, ITU, all these other things. So there's like this. It's a very delicate balance I think they're trying to play of trying to. If you come down too hard on somebody, then maybe the big players leave, and then now you're out of it. So that's true for WHO. Seems probably true for ITU.
Yeah. So one of the other new ones this year was Kazakhstan, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So Kazakhstan, they let's see. So this is another. So I would categorize the big outages that we've seen, like internet shutdowns, government shutdowns. Either probably the biggest number one cause was something election related. Either people didn't like the election, they thought it was bogus, and they're out in the streets protesting. That's probably the biggest reason for a shutdown in the past few years. The second biggest, maybe overlooked, is gas subsidies. You have a petrostate that doesn't wants to get out of subsidizing everyone's gas, and when they try to roll back the subsidies, this hits everybody in the pocketbooks, and that's an automatic way to just make everyone super angry. And so this happened in Sudan, and actually there's a big internet shutdown in November 2019 in Iran. It was triggered by a similar mechanism where they're trying to get out of these subsidies. The same thing happened with Kazakhstan. That was the triggering event. Obviously, there's more dissatisfaction with the government there beyond the gas, but that was one where that's one that people just can't. Wow. They can't accept that one. That will put people in the street burning down buildings as getting off the gas subsidies. So this has been resolved also. But.
So do you have a forecasting capacity, or like do you have an early warning system that can trigger a ping immediately when you don't have to sit there always watching these data flows?
I can't predict the future.
Well, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, I've
Russia
been
is
getting
likely to
questions about
impose some
Ukraine.
kind of
I've looked
disruption.
around a little bit. I've written a bit about things that have taken place in Ukraine in the past, and I wonder what it looked like. So just to lay from the internet standpoint, it's helpful to understand that on the eastern part of Ukraine, the part that's like Donbass, Donetsk, and that area is wired mostly oriented to Russia, so they get their service from Russia, whereas most of Kiev and the rest of the country is oriented towards the west and getting service from the west. So if the Russians were to invade, they'd probably come into Donbass to occupy it. That is an area that they already provide internet service into, the Russian providers that are providing service. So I don't think they'd cut off service. I mean, they would want to mess with Kiev, like the capital, I would imagine, which is more, again, Western oriented internet wise. Within Europe, the big centers of gravity are Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam. Those are the big internet exchange points, and that's where a lot of internet content gets hosted. And so everybody's pointing their internet their long haul, backhaul connections are going in that direction. So I don't know. I don't know what to expect there. We'll keep an eye on it. But
is there? We'll go just another couple of minutes, but I think I wrote about the Carrington event, a solar flare that took down. It was in the 1800s, but they've calculated if it happened now, it would be extraordinarily disruptive of a lot of these technologies. I'm not going to get into those questions of the likelihood of the next one of those, but if there were a strategic reason to take down the Londons, Frankfurts, New Yorks of the world, is there a superstorm that you can already model that would just really take things beyond a level you've seen so far?
Like a threat to the global internet. I mean, there's been a couple of cases. There was a case a number of years ago where the Lynx is the London Internet Exchange. Lynx was attacked in a DDoS attack, and it caused a lot of problems. But there was a lot of thankfully, these things suffer enough outages that we have a lot of practice recovering from them, and so there's a lot of lessons learned from that incident of how to make sure that doesn't happen again. I mean, I don't know. There are some centers of gravity that, if you were to take it out, would cause a lot of problems. But I think we would, in time, recover from those as well.
Well, in the meantime, it's just good to see Tonga is coming back online slowly with the help of satellite providers, but it's pretty clear that this hardwired, we're still a hardwired world in many ways, and it's important to remember that if you want to have nations, especially those scattered across large seascapes like the Pacific, be a functional part of the global information environment, they have to think a lot more about investing in this kind of connectivity and redundancy, and then I guess backup plans for when the worst happens, like a volcano erupting.
I mean, I guess, and then at some point you get to a point where you can't survive every scenario, or you just don't have the resources.
Sure.
I mean, in this case, in Tonga, I know we're wrapping this up in the blog post. I mentioned that this was this cable was funded by international aid. There's no business case to build the cable to these Pacific islands. They're not going to make money off of it, whereas other cables that are being built around the world are fruitful enterprises. This is a humanitarian act to connect these islands, so someone had asked me, why don't they have a second one? Like, I don't think they're going to get a second one. I mean, it was great that they got the first one. No one's putting up the money for another one. That first one was a gift, and then the rest is just satellite. If you have an event like this where the volcano is the eruption is so severe that it takes out both the cable and your satellite backup, that's hard to stay online in that scenario. I don't know
Yeah.
we're ever going to be a point where that an island can survive that.
Something that I'll probably try to explore more, maybe with you and others going forward, is to to somehow figure out ways, at least, to facilitate some capacity when natural hazard strikes. I wrote in 2015 when Nepal had the big Kathmandu-centered earthquake, how communities in the hinterlands and a little newspaper in northern India were using Facebook basically as a way to say, hey, you know, we're in trouble in this village up in up this valley. Can you get a helicopter here? You know, people, I think, sometimes don't recognize this. This can be a life or death capacity to have the capacity to reach out. So we'll talk more about that going forward. So thanks, Doug from Kentic to take a little time out to be on this broadcast today, Sustain What. And I hope people follow you and check out kentic.com to learn more about the backbones, both the physical cable infrastructure and other stuff that keeps us connected and looped in, whether you're in rural Maine or in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. This is Andy Refkin from Columbia Climate School and Earth Institute signing off, and you have a good rest of the day. Stay connected. Take care.